know the direction we want to go.
I think long-range planning is good for any part of our operation. I don't have anything against that. We should have that. But to just say we're going to hire an architect right now, here's the budget for it, we're ahead of ourselves. I agree with what you just said. Let somebody come in and make a presentation. If we're not satisfied with that, bring a couple more in. And then they could give us a price of what it's going to cost for that particular part of it only. Then they make a plan, then we say we're going to take this building first, that's the second, whatever plan is, and go from there. Karen.
When I did called several highway departments, and I think I talked to 10 or 12 of them in different counties in the state of Illinois. And if you do that, you will realize that our situation is unique. Our population, our miles of roads, square miles of county. We have needs that are truly just our needs, and Champaign County does not compare to Kankakee County in their needs. They're huge, for one thing. And there are other counties that are smaller. And we're very unique to that situation. So a plan and a study would deal with those unique situations that are unique to Kankakee County. To bring people in to talk about what they did in their county or what it's not us. It's not, we don't even know how much this is going to cost to do a study. We need to find out, we need to do an RFP, and it's not going to kill us. It'll be all right. I mean, it'll probably be a good thing. So, I really don't understand the apprehension of a plan. I mean, every other department has done space needs studies in this county. The sheriff took control and built his facility and figured out what he would need and went forward and moved forward on things like that. I mean, that's what we're supposed to do. And the direction should come from the county board to the department.
Any other comments? Mr. Oldham.
Hello. Hello.
You're there.
If the RFP is not going to cost us anything, let's do the RFP. And this is unusual for us to be pushing the engineer to expand his facility. So I'm resting on his judgment on what our needs are going to be. So let's do the RFP, and I'll make that a motion.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
There's no cost on it.
No.
There's no second.
Mr. Scholl, any other comments?
Yes, I've had my hand up, Mr. Chairman, for a while.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just a couple of things I wanted to point out. I've got a copy of the audit here. County Highway Fund closed the year with $2.5 million balance, and it was an increase from the prior year. So I don't think this would be truly straining the budget. And I think it's important sometimes that the board does take the bull by the horns and push to make changes that are needed to be made. I see the animal control building, which is really so obsolete, which should have been replaced probably 10, 15 years ago. That is still languishing. But when the department head takes the bull by the horns, as we saw with the sheriff, miracles can happen. And I think we need to, instead of being resistant to change, and it's just human nature, we're all resistant to change, I think sometimes we need to embrace it. I think we need to think outside the box. I think we need to look at the big picture. Locating right there on Route 17, it's right next to I-57. I mean, there are so many advantages to doing that, and I think it's something we need to pursue. And as far as to whether we're going, somebody had talked about the fleet, whether we should have highway servicing the fleet. I think our fleet's at about 80, 90 cars because we have several departments now that have vehicles besides the sheriff's department. And, maybe as we have more vehicles, the economies of scale start playing in. Maybe we need to look at, should we be doing it in-house? It may save us money. We took the radio repairs and we put those in-house. We didn't have any qualms about hiring the communication specialist a year and a half ago. So there is precedent for taking something in the private sector and putting it in the public sector, but I think this is something we should at least start taking the baby steps toward. Let's move on this. I mean, I think it's time.
For the fourth time? Go ahead.
Thanks, Jim. I just want to say this. Jim has made the point that he can deal with the facility that he's in, yet we keep buying property and expanding out into the neighborhood. So we're spending taxpayers' money without a plan. It's not that we've been sitting in the same facility and not expanding out into the neighborhood. We keep buying property. We need a plan to how we spend the taxpayers' money on this property. There's nothing wrong with that.
We're jumping all over the place here a little bit. And we have a motion on the floor, and could you read the motion again?
A motion to move forward with the RFP.
Okay. That simplifies it. Okay?
Roll
All in
call.
favor, say aye.
Roll call, please.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. We're not spending money. So that's appropriate we do. We're taking the first step. We're not in any way dividing it or anything else. We're taking it in the order it ought to come. Okay. Jim, anything else?
No, sir. I have to make a...
Sure.
I just want to, a statement was made with respect to surplus funds and so forth. As long as we have roads, the money is going to be needed. I mean, there is no way I will support any measure whatsoever to take money away from the construction of roads. We need them in the rural areas. The demand upon them is going to increase, and we've got to be able to maintain them, repair them, and expand the county road structure. So, I mean, that's something I just get emotional about.
Thank you. Mr. Oldoff.
Are we on the old or new business? Mr. McCarthy, do we have, what part of control do we have on Armour Road? Where does that end?
What Bill's talking about is, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the ongoing construction in front of Hunter's Run, Calvary Bible Church. We entered into agreement with the Village of Bradley. The Village of Bradley would be the lead agency. They would prepare the plans, specifications, and estimates, subject to the approval of the county of Kankakee, let the bids, award the contract, and see that these improvements are constructed in accordance with motor fuel tax policies and procedures. The contract was awarded back, I believe, about, the contract was signed late August, early September of 2007. Then the box culvert was ordered by the contractor. There needs to be some time to have this box culvert fabricated and prepared to install at the location. There were some delays in that box culvert fabrication, and we were reaching a point in the construction year where the ability to get the pavement restored with asphalt after the box culvert was installed was in jeopardy. So there was a meeting or a conversation between the Village of Bradley and my office with regard to, do we want to force that box culvert installation and then maintain a gravel patch or some type of patch that was very difficult to maintain over the winter months. And we concluded that, given the weather conditions, the long-range forecast, that, you know what, we might do better just to wait until we have more favorable weather conditions in the spring and maintain that level of service on Armour Road through the late fall, early winter months. That was a decision that was made. So there was a justifiable delay in the project at that point in time. There was an additional 3-week delay this construction season, once the work got underway, as a result of a misunderstanding, a rethinking on the part of Commonwealth Edison to shield the high power lines that are on the south side of Armour Road. And as a result of that, there was a 3-week delay in trying to get some resolution to that problem, which the contractor ultimately took on the risk and responsibility of installing the box culvert while the lines were still hot and unprotected. So that's another delay too. Now, Bill, let me try to, if you would please indulge me. That does not account perfectly for the amount of delay that we've experienced in getting that contract done. I've been in contact with the consulting engineers for the Village of Bradley as recently as this morning in anticipation of this question. And they are doing an analysis right now to see how much time was justifiable delays in the course of doing the construction for this job. And if those delays exceed the reasonable amount of time in the postponement of the work last fall and the delays with the utility company this spring and perhaps some other unforeseen weather delays that were there, then there may be some cause to collect some liquidated damages from this contractor as a result of the delay in the work. And we're investigating that. If nothing else, there will be a letter issued by the Village of Bradley that puts a final deadline on this thing, giving them notice that any further delays in this project will result in claims for liquidated damages as a result of the delays in the completion of the work. So that's where we're at with it. I think that we're in a position where we have to demonstrate how the delays have damaged us. We're investigating that. If it's caused extra engineering time or any expenses to us that were beyond what we anticipated reasonably to be completed by May 31st, which was the original deadline for the contract, plus those justifiable delays that occurred last fall and this spring, it's under investigation. I hope that's satisfying.
Well, I'm very glad there wasn't, at least I'm not aware of any accidents that were involved there, but it was a very huge inconvenience to the church in making those turns around those barricades. And my understanding is the completion date, and I don't know if this includes the delays, I thought it did, was May 31st, and we're 2.5 months past that, and it just sat there. Nothing took place. Nobody was working on the medians. The sidewalk was put in, and then nothing happened for putting the dirt back and sculpting the ditch, and it just has sat there, and there should be some remediation.
New business?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to point out, to assuage some of the concerns that road funds might be going toward improving the highway department. The highway department, I'm looking here at our current budget here. Our highway department gets about 1.7 million, it looks like. They're estimating 1.7 million in property taxes alone. That is separate from funds such as the motor fuel tax. It's separate from the bridge funds. So I was hitting monies outside of motor fuel funds for roads. Also, I'm looking at the budget, and they do have capital expenditures in here. They have capital outlay, they have rights of building improvements, they have right-of-way improvements, highway improvements. So there is a mechanism there to fund it without taking away from the roads. You know, because they do need to pay for their facilities as it is. So there are other outlets out there. Plus, there may also be other funds we could use through the general fund.
Yeah. Ann, thank you for those comments, and allow me to respond. I like to consider myself to be a fiscal conservative, and I guess only history will tell with regard to whether that's true or not. Perhaps a fiscal conservative even to a fault, but again, we'll have to wait and see. The Kankakee County Highway Fund is currently healthy, and it was designed in no small measure to be that way. I refrained from buying as much equipment last year as I had anticipated buying. We need to replace a loader, and we need to replace a motor grader. Both of these units are probably going to be in a 1.5 $150,000, perhaps even higher range, because we saw some developments that were occurring in the petroleum market that were of a concern to us. Most recently, and I was preparing this for a reporter who made the inquiry, who called and says, hey, what, you know, the cost of salt has tripled. What are you going to do? Last year we used 5,500 ton of material at a cost of around $40 per ton. That was about $220,000. I hadn't heard that the price tripled. I did find out that in the state of Illinois bid, which we participate in joint purchasing, that the original bid was for salt went up, but it doubled. It went from $40 a ton to $80 a ton in the original bid. I've heard a rumor, I have not verified this yet, I've heard a rumor that the state rejected that bid thinking it was too high, and now that the bids are coming back in, they may have in fact tripled. I haven't verified that yet. But if it is $120 per ton, what that will effectively do is double the cost of my salt budget from last year, from $220,000 up to near $440,000. That's 4 miles of resurfacing. That's 2 large pieces of equipment and more. The trend right now for highway expenditures for maintaining an operations fleet and for maintaining a highway system is not very good. And I, for one, I'm glad that I have a little bit of cushion in the highway fund, and that's there partly by design. The rest of my funds that are available for highway construction, motor fuel tax, is the lowest that it's been in the last 10 years, I believe. The matching tax fund will be nearly depleted with the construction of the Lau Road project. The bridge fund will be nearly depleted with the construction of the bridge northeast of Essex, which is now programmed for federal aid participation, and also the bridge south of the village of Grant Park. So I can see a day in the not too distant future when the so-called surplus in these funds will be running low. I'm concerned about that, and we're not going to have a lot of money that's going to be available for capital improvements if something doesn't break in Springfield here pretty soon. So let me caution you, as you look at the Highway Department fund, that it would be good to maintain a little bit of a cushion in there to cover us during these uncertain economic times.
Mr. Vickery, and then Mr. Boyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just an update on the Low Road. You may have covered it earlier, I missed it, I'm sorry. On the Lau Road. An update.
Oh, I beg your pardon. An update. Very good. The curb and gutter and the widening and the resurfacing is nearly complete downtown. It's waiting for the final lift of asphalt, the finished lift of asphalt. The railroad has made its improvements at the at-grade crossing, Kankakee, Beaverville, and Southern Railroad. And the Kankakee Valley Construction Company is currently widening the northern portion, the rural cross-section portion, from the KB&S Railroad out to Route 17. The bridge is completed. Once the widening is, once the trenches are opened up and the hot mix asphalt base course is installed there, we're on a pretty fast track to get this thing done. I'm looking at some significant developments there in the next week or two, to the point where we might see that road reopen again shortly. So we should wrap that up here before fall.
George.
Jim, in addition to the things that you mentioned, for example, Lau Road, how long did it take for you to have the funding to get started on Lau Road?
Most of these big jobs that I've mentioned here are a result of 20 years of savings.
On the road extension, 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that,
Maybe KBC. Okay.
I was going to say that we're glad about the Armour Road extension.
Go ahead.
Too late.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to make a comment, I run a business and I take care of a building, and I find that when I run my business, if I spend too little money on something because I'm afraid I'm gonna go broke, that I end up having to buy that thing 3 or 4 times at that price. And so it probably would have been better for me to spend a little bit more money for that piece of equipment or whatever to last a little bit longer. And the highway department and its facility, we need to look at that the same way. My business would run more efficient if I didn't do things like that, and I'd put less things in the landfill if I didn't do things like that. I equate it to when you're on an airplane and they tell you when you first start off that you should put the oxygen on yourself before you put it on your child, because you might pass out. The facility itself is the mother of the highway department, and if you don't take care of it the way you should, you're going to have a hard time doing your roads and keeping your equipment safe. And you know, if you have a fire, you're going to have a problem. And so those are things we need to look at. We cannot ignore the facility itself.
No disagreement.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? Mr. Notoff? Mr. Stoll?